Good afternoon, members of parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to the continuation of public meeting number 11 of the parliamentary year 2024-2025 for today, Thursday, October 30th, 2025. I would like to give a special welcome to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, and her support staff. We have established a quorum of 10 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. We have received no notice of absence. I have also not received any notice of lateness. Does any member of parliament have any notifications? I don't see a need. We continue with the agenda point for this public meeting. The draft national ordinance containing rules regarding a basic payment account for consumers. National Ordinance Basic Payment Account. Parliamentary year 2023-2024-174 under IS 292-2023-2024 dated December 20th, 2023. The draft national ordinance containing rules regarding a basic payment account for consumers was read December 20th, 2023 by Parliament. A Central Committee meeting was held on January 4th, 2024 on the subject matter in which the members of Parliament posed their questions on the draft national ordinance. A report has been made on the deliberation of the Central Committee meeting and was sent to the government, as well as to the members. The government answered this report with a so-called nota na aanleiding van het verslag, note following the final report, which was received by Parliament on February 27, 2025, on the IS 652-2024-2025. These documents are available on Teams, Parliament General Teams. The meeting was first convened on April 29, 2025. At the handling of Agenda Point 2, the Honorable Minister of Finance gave a presentation on the subject. Thereafter, in accordance with the speakers list, members of Parliament were given the opportunity to pose questions to the Minister in the first round. The Minister has returned today to provide the answers to the questions posed by the members of Parliament during this first round. It is good to note that during this meeting of April 29th, an amendment from Member of Parliament, Mr. Ardwell M.R. Irian, was submitted and has been forwarded to the government for its response to the amendment. This document is registered on the IS 953-2024-2025. On September 17, 2025, Parliament received a memorandum of modification from the government. This memorandum has been forwarded to the members of Parliament and will form part of the draft as submitted by government. This document is registered on the IS 68-2025-2026. Additionally, on October 27, 2025, Parliament received an amendment from MP S.A. Westcott Williams regarding this draft. Additionally, on October 29, 2025, Parliament received a corrected version of this amendment. The amendment has been forwarded to the government for its response, as well as to the members of Parliament. This amendment is registered on the IS 243-2025-2026. Before I give the floor to the Minister, as this is a public meeting, allow me to remind you of the usage of interruptions. The following guide applies in accordance with Article 43 of the Rules of Order. The chairperson may permit interruptions. These interruptions should aim to seek clarification, challenge assertions, or contribute additional information, and should consist of brief remarks or questions without introduction. The chairperson will ensure order and decorum during the meetings and the use of interruptions. Members, ministers, and guests must maintain parliamentary decorum and refrain from making offensive or disorderly interruptions. Members will be allowed 3 interruptions per agenda point. The interruptions are to be posed from the lectern place in the Legislative Hall. I now give the floor to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, for her presentation of the answers. Minister of Finance, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members of Parliament, griffier, dedicated staff, as well as radio listeners, social media viewers, all under the sound of my voice, a pleasant good afternoon and blessed day to all. During the public meeting of Parliament held on April 29, 2025, members of Parliament posed questions in relation to the draft national ordinance regarding the basic payments account. I am honored to hereby provide the answers to the questions of the honorable members of Parliament, starting with questions posed by MP Labega. MP Labega took note, Mr. Chairman, that the bank account will only be accessible in St. Martin and Curacao. MP Labega's question, does this mean that when traveling outside of these countries, debit cards issued for basic bank accounts will not work for payment or cash withdrawals? If so, MP Labega believes this needs to be looked into further. Through you, Mr. Chairman, this matter was indeed looked into further, and as the draft national ordinance on the basic payment account indicates, the Honorable MP is indeed correct. Unfortunately, the basic payment account can only be used within the monetary union. This restriction is to mitigate risks of money laundering, financing of terrorism, considering that only a simplified due diligence will be conducted when onboarding clients who apply for this basic bank account. For example, no documentation supporting proof of source of funds is required. Additionally, this limitation is to prevent banks from facing de-risking by their correspondent banks. I specifically inquired about the ability to withdraw cash abroad, which is indeed a valid question. While this will certainly be possible within the monetary union, no assurance can currently be given that it will also be possible outside of the union. This is, however, an important point, as individuals should have access to their funds, even when using a basic payment account. A definitive answer has not yet been provided, as this will be determined during the practical implementation of the legislation. Next question, pertaining to international purchases, online shopping, etc., is this a possibility? If not, I think this needs to be considered, according to MP Labega. Mr. Chair, through you, in the draft national ordinance of the basic payment account, in principle, money transfers are limited to payments between St. Martin and Curacao. Any payment through the basic payment account will be limited to payments in St. Martin and in Curacao. This limitation is also intended to be applied to online payments. However, while this is the current intention, it will only be definitively determined during the practical implementation of the legislation. I now move on to questions posed by MP La Cruz. What is the percentage of residents that do not have a bank account? Through you, Mr. Chairman, from the survey conducted in 2021, whereby 1,400 households were interviewed face-to-face randomly, and it showed into St. Martin's payment behavior, it could be concluded that approximately 23% of the residents of St. Martin do not have a current account. However, when considering the respondents without any digital payment possibilities, such as the savings account, the results show that 17% are fully unbanked. Next question. What type of jobs do these locals have, or what type of income do they have? Through you, Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, the survey does not give insight into the type of jobs the locals have. However, the survey does give detailed insight in the income according to various wage brackets. Reference is made to page 7, figure 4 of the report, A Glance into St. Martin's Payment Behavior and Financial Matters 2021, where the following income brackets are visualized. So, none is 11%, from 0 to 500 is 7%, 501 to 1,500 is 32%, 1501 to 3000 is 28%. 3001 to 5000 is 12%. 5001 to 7500 is 5%. 7501 to 10,000 is 2%, and anything above the 10,001 is 3%. MP La Cruz's next question was in line, or it ties into the amount of 3,000 guilders that is allowed on this account. How was that amount determined? Why this amount? Through you, Mr. Chairman, I share the sentiments regarding in particular the deposit limit as it relates to St. Martin cost of living. As Minister of Finance, my objective is ensuring financial inclusion for all residents, particularly those who are unbanked or operate within the informal sector. The draft national ordinance on the basic payment account was precisely developed to guarantee every customer the right to a safe, affordable, and accessible bank account, free of discrimination and subject to simplified screening. The maximum monthly deposit limit that the honorable member refers to is indeed an important threshold. As per Article 2, Paragraph 6B of the draft ordinance, the authority to determine or adjust that limit rests exclusively with the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin through the issuance of a generally binding regulation. The rationale behind the limit originally proposed and currently applied in Curaçao was primarily related to risk management and anti-money laundering safeguards rather than socioeconomic indicators. That said, I fully acknowledge that St. Martin's economic context and cost of living levels differ significantly from Curaçao's, and therefore it is both reasonable and appropriate that these realities be considered. In this regard, I wish to inform Parliament that we intend to formally engage the CBCS to review whether an upward adjustment of the cap is justified, taking into account verified local data on average expenses and income flows. This will be done in consultation with the domestic banking sector and the CBCS so that any proposal presented reflects a balanced approach between accessibility, compliance, and risk management. Finally, while the government cannot unilaterally set this limit, we fully support a data-driven discussion with the central bank aimed at ensuring the basic bank account fulfills its intended purposes, that is, to promote financial inclusion while taking into consideration St. Martin's realities. Parliament will be kept informed of all developments in this regard. Next question by MP La Cruz. Article 3.3 speaks of a system. MP La Cruz states that he knows of BKR system, the Bank Credit Registratie System exists in the Netherlands, where your financial profile is registered, all banks have communication, and can see an individual's outstanding debt. Is that already the case here, or is that something new that will be introduced? Through you, Mr. Chairman, such a system does not exist right now, and I am not aware of any such system being worked on at the moment. However, Article 3, third paragraph of the draft national ordinance basic payment account merely provides a basis for banks to be able to communicate with each other in regard to the basic payment account. In addition, the same articles provides the financial institution the possibility to request the applicant to sign a declaration that the applicant doesn't have a payment account at another institution in St. Martin. Article 5, first paragraph, subparagraph B of the draft national ordinance basic payment account then provides the possibility to terminate the basic payment account agreement if the applicant already holds another payment account. Next question, Article 2.5.3 biedt diensten tegen redelijke vergoeding aan. The MP has a problem with the word redelijk. What is redelijk? He has seen some banks charge $10 to withdraw cash from an ATM. He doesn't know if the minister or the central bank has influence, but he's concerned that the term redelijk give banks too much freedom to charge whatever they want to. Through you, Mr. Chair, Article 2, Paragraph 5 of the draft national ordinance on the basic payment account stipulates that a basic payment account must be offered either free of charge or for a reasonable fee. A reasonable fee in this context refers to a fee that is lower than that of a regular payment account, recognizing that this particular group of consumers makes use of fewer banking services. However, I would like to take this opportunity to inform the honorable members that in addition to the draft national ordinance on the basic payment account, several related draft laws are currently being finalized for submission to Parliament. These legislative initiatives are essential not only for advancing financial inclusion and protecting consumers, but also for improving St. Martin's compliance rating with the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, CFATF. One such important draft is the National Ordinance on the Supervision of Financial Market Infrastructures and Oversight. Many of us, including the honorable members of this House, have personally experienced or heard of the concerns of citizens regarding high banking and transaction fees. This upcoming legislation will, for the first time, empower the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin with the legal authority to regulate and oversee banking transaction fees. At present, neither I nor the Central Bank have the legal authority to intervene in or regulate these fees. It is therefore my sincere hope that when this draft ordinance reaches Parliament, it will receive broad support so that the CBCS can be properly mandated to ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability in the fee structure that affect our people on a daily basis. I now move on to questions posed by MP Roseberg. MP Roseberg stated, Mr. Chair, through you, that she understands that it will be a basic right for consumers of St. Martin to have a bank account, but what she's seeing is that the banks are still able to deny a person a bank account. So how does the legislation reconcile the bank's authority over who they accept as a client and the individual's right to a bank account? How can the government guarantee that in practice everyone will indeed have access to a bank account? Mr. Chair, through you, this legislation ensures that individuals who normally cannot meet the requirements to open a bank account are given the opportunity to access a basic payment account. Research by the CBCS and STAT has shown the challenges these persons face. The ordinance addresses them by simplifying the process. Under Article 2, the following are required: a valid ID and personal data, contact information, transaction profile. Because the due diligence is simplified, the account itself is also limited to basic services. This way, the risks of misuse for money laundering or fraud are reduced, while still allowing these persons to be included in our financial system. Importantly, accounts must be opened within 10 working days of a complete application, unless refusal grounds apply. These grounds are narrowly defined. No genuine link to St. Martin or already holding a local account. And finally, if an institution wrongly refuses, the applicant has the right to file a complaint or appeal to the court of first instance. In short, this legislation opens the door to financial inclusion while safeguarding the system against abuse. Next question. As it relates to persons who have been convicted, their bank accounts have been closed and they have been prevented from opening a new account because banks share this information. So these persons continue to be excluded from society. How will the government play a role in preventing this discrimination? Through you, Mr. Chair, Article 3 of the draft ordinance explains when a bank may refuse to open a basic payment account, and Article 5 explains when a bank may close one. In the original version, there was a clause that allowed a bank to refuse or close an account if the person has been convicted within the last 8 years of such crimes such as fraud, forgery, or money laundering. However, since people who already have regular bank accounts are already covered under existing laws that address these same offenses, applying this rule only to people who want a basic payment account would have been unfair and unequal treatment. For that reason, these clauses were removed through a note of amendment, which deletes them from Article 3 and 5. This amendment has now been officially submitted to Parliament for consideration. Next question. Is there an alternative solution for persons who have been convicted? The MP noticed that this stipulates that for a period of 8 years, these individuals will not have access to a basic bank account. How will they be able to function in society? What does the government intend to do to address this issue? Through you, Mr. Chair, reference is made to the answer on the previous question, concluding a note of unwising has been sent to Parliament, taking out a clause limiting access specifically to a basic payment account. Next question. For business owners that are not able to open a bank account, are they able to open a consumer account under this legislation? Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, as individual consumers, they may open the basic payment account insofar as they comply with the requirements and eligibility criteria. Next question. Concerning the consumers' protection legislation, what is the position of the Minister of Finance? Is the Ministry of Finance collaborating with the Ministry of TIAT in order to establish an entity that will have oversight authority? Consumenten bescherming. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Article 4 of the Draft National Ordinance, Basic Payment Account, provides a complaint procedure and the right for consumers to appeal to the Court of First Instance. In addition, several related draft ordinances will soon be sent to Parliament. The Draft National Ordinance Supervision of Payment Service Providers includes a licensing system for anyone operating professionally as a payment service provider in or from St. Martin. It complements the existing banking and credit system ordinance and focuses on services that facilitate cashless payments such as online purchases. The Draft National Ordinance Supervision of Virtual Asset Service Providers includes a similar licensing system for providers of virtual assets. This is necessary to manage AML, CTF risks, and to ensure compliance with international FATF standards. Finally, the draft ordinance on oversight of payment and security systems and on the supervision of FMI system administrators will also be submitted to Parliament shortly. These will give the central bank the authority to issue guidelines on matters such as bank charges and transparency, as indicated in my previous answer. Mr. Chairman, may I have a few minutes break?
I hereby adjourn for 5 minutes. Meeting adjourned. I hereby reconvene the meeting and give the floor back to the Minister. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move on to questions posed by MP Waver. The aim of most is growth. So what happens if someone is promoted and makes more than the 3,000 guilders? Does having a basic bank account facilitate their transition into regular accounts as their situation evolves? Or is it that they would no longer qualify to maintain a basic bank account, so the account will be used and they have to reapply for a regular account separately, starting from scratch? Through you, Mr. Chair, the Honorable Through you, Mr. Chair, it is stated that if someone is being promoted, please be informed that any individual who is employed and can provide proof of a source of income, even if it is below the 3,000, may open a regular bank account, provided that they meet the other applicable requirements. However, when focusing solely on the income threshold, the central bank has clarified that if the 3,000 limit on the basic bank account is exceeded, incidentally, this should not pose a problem. However, if the individual consistently exceeds this amount, the individual no longer meets the criteria for holding a basic payment account. The account should be closed. In such cases, reference can be made to Article 5, Paragraph 1, Sub F of the draft ordinance. It may also be the case that the individual has obtained permanent employment or has demonstrated over a longer period that they meet other criteria needed to open a regular bank account. In that case, the individual may transition into a regular account. I now move on to questions posed by MP York. MP York stated, Mr. Chair, through you, that the minister made note of 17% of the population not having a bank account. With the implementation of this law, we can expect a potential increase of 17% of people who have bank accounts, which would result in 17% in lines at the bank. The main tool to combat this and circumvent people having to visit banks is online banking services. Does this law have any provisions that make online banking a right rather than a privilege? Through you, Mr. Chair, the law does not explicitly state that online banking is a separate right. However, Article 2, Paragraph 3 stipulates that a basic payment account includes the same services as those offered to holders of other regular payment accounts at the same institution. This means that if online banking is part of the standard services offered to regular account holders, it must equally be made available to those holding a basic payment account. This legislation is more for personal banking. Next question. But if we broaden the scope, the business sector also needs to be addressed. Is the ministry currently working on a similar law to support local businesses? Currently, we see the government issuing business licenses, but this does not ensure that said business will be able to open a bank account. We have several businesses without a bank account on the island, and because of the CFATF laws that are particularly stringent with Caribbean countries, the MP would like to know what, if anything, is being done as it pertains to the right for businesses to have a bank account. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I agree with the Honorable MP York that this matter needs to be addressed. It has had my attention for some time, and I have already held discussions with the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin on possible solutions. However, further in-depth discussions, including with the Bankers Association, are still required in order to reach a workable resolution. I now move on to questions posed by MP Arian. Mr. Chair, through you, the MP expressed his position and concerns regarding the banking law in its current state and informs the minister that he has submitted to Parliament an amendment to the law ensuring that digital products and online banking services are available for all. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have taken note of MP Arian's proposed amendment. In addition to taking note, I had it forwarded to the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin for their feedback. I would like to make it clear that I understand and agree with the intent behind the amendment, which seeks to provide further guarantees regarding the digital accessibility and availability of basic banking services. Digital banking is indeed important and everyone should have access to it. However, after receiving the remarks from the CBCS, which I have shared with Parliament, it appears that this draft law may not be the most appropriate legislation in which to include such an amendment. Article 2, paragraph 3 of the bill already contains an obligation for payment service providers to offer the services of a basic payment account, insofar as the requested payment service providers also offers those services to consumers who hold a regular payment account. The goal is to ensure that consumers with a basic payment account have access to the same services as other consumers of the same provider. My apologies. The same services as other customers of the same provider, including electronic channels such as internet and mobile banking, if these are standard within the institution's regular offerings. This system ensures equal access to services for all consumers of a payment service provider without creating a separate entitlement for holders of a basic payment account. This was a deliberate and carefully considered decision. It takes into account that some smaller or specialized banks may not offer or may not currently offer digital banking, and therefore imposing such a requirement through this law could unintentionally create greater obligations for basic account holders than for regular account holders at those institutions. At present, consumers retain the freedom to choose which bank best suits their needs, whether one with digital access or one without. Although the proposed amendment goes beyond what is already established in Article 2, paragraph 3, I share the view of the CBCS that this may not be the most suitable legislation in which to introduce such a provision. However, as previously stated, I agree with the intent and spirit of the amendment proposed by MP Arian. I personally share the view that greater digital accessibility to banking services is important. After all, I myself prefer not to visit banks in person, and I would support the inclusion of such provisions in the legislation that governs all bank accounts. I move on to questions posed by MP De Weaver. Why is there a maximum deposit of 3,000 guilders? Normally, banks charge administration fees, and that's how they make their money. So having a maximum deposit threshold doesn't really make sense to the Honorable MP. By limiting how much money a person is able to have on the account, it limits how the account is used. Through you, Mr. Chair, this restriction is intended to help mitigate the risk of money laundering and the financing of terrorism, given that only simplified due diligence is carried out when onboarding clients who apply for a basic bank account. For example, applicants are not required to provide documentations providing the source of their funds. In addition, this limitation helps prevent local banks from facing de-risking measures from their correspondent banks abroad. It is important to note, however, that there is no limit on the total balance that a person may hold in a basic bank account. The restriction applies only to the amount that can be deposited each month. For instance, if an individual deposits 2,000 guilders in 1 month and spends 1,000, leaving a balance of 1,000, the following month they may deposit up to 3,000 guilders, bringing the new balance to 4,000 guilders. Therefore, while there is no cap on the total balance, there is a monthly cap on deposits to the account. Next question. The MP would like to receive clarity on bank fees. Will basic bank account owners be subject to the same fees as the same rates as holders of regular bank accounts? Through you, Mr. Chair, the draft national ordinance mentions that the basic payment account should be offered free of charge or for a reasonable fee. A reasonable fee is one that is lower than that of a regular payment account, as this group of customers makes use of fewer services. I move on to questions posed by MP Myers. Article 16 of our Constitution addresses discrimination. Banks do not give loans to persons over the retirement age. This is a form of discrimination. Through you, Mr. Chair, this matter relates to a broader policy considerations and is not covered by the scope of this legislative proposal. However, this matter will be taken up in my discussions with the Bankers Association. I now move on to questions posed by MP Jansen Webster. Because the banks want us to go cashless, The amounts that we are able to withdraw in cash is being limited. We cannot withdraw small amounts. Through you, Mr. Chair. This matter relates to a broader policy consideration and is not covered by the scope of this legislative proposal. At this moment, the smaller amount to withdraw from the ATM is 20 guilders, 20 Caribbean guilders. And at the bank teller, small amounts can be withdrawn. However, at the bank teller, the withdrawal fee will be higher than that at the ATM or of the ATM. For the exact reason, I have been very keen on ensuring that individuals can use their debit cards to make purchases of any amount without incurring additional fees. In accordance with agreements between vendors and the banks, I encourage everyone to remain vigilant and to report any breaches to the St. Martin Bankers Association at gmail.com, as all parties must work together while we move toward a more cashless society. I am also pleased to note that positive changes have already been observed, with more vendors now accepting all card payments consistently. I now move on to questions posed by MP Westcott Williams. Mr. Chair, MP Westcott would like to point out a few key differences in the draft law before us today and the proposed motion presented by former MP Bryson. In this draft law, non-residents are included based on EU regulations. They require that some kind of registration be done in the country where you apply for the bank account. MP Westcott would like to know the government's position on this matter. Through you, Mr. Chair, according to the draft legislation, non-residents are only included providing that they comply with the criteria as stipulated in the draft legislation, like, for example, having a genuine interest. Werkelijk belang. A genuine interest means that a consumer has a clear relationship with St. Martin. This is assumed in any case if a consumer legally resides in St. Martin. Undocumented persons are not covered in this bill. Next question. In the proposal sent to government, it was suggested that legal entities who cannot open a regular bank account be included in this basic bank account law. That is not the case in this draft law before us. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is correct, as this legislation is only for consumers and not for legal entities, as the latter pose a different money laundering risk. Next question. In this draft law before, reference is made to the advice of the Council of Advice of Curaçao. To which extent are these laws different or the same? Because the amount of 3,000 guilders as the maximum is based on the finding in Curaçao in terms of the earnings. What are the exact findings in the context for St. Martin? Through you, Mr. Chair, the findings from Curaçao and St. Martin are aligned. In both jurisdictions, a significant majority of individuals earn 3,000 guilders or less, around 80% in Curaçao and 78% in St. Martin, according to the surveys conducted and the reports provided. As previously mentioned, I fully acknowledge that St. Martin's economic context and cost of living levels differ significantly from Curaçao's, and therefore it is both reasonable and appropriate that these realities be considered. In this regard, I wish to inform Parliament that we intend to formally engage the CBCS to review whether an upward adjustment of the cap is justified, taking into account verified local data on average expenses and income flows. While the government cannot unilaterally set this limit, as it is not included in the law, we fully support a data-driven discussion with the central bank aimed at ensuring the basic bank account fulfills its intended purpose, that is to promote financial inclusion while taking into consideration St. Martin's realities. Parliament will be kept informed of all developments in this regard. Next question. In Curaçao, only certain legal entities like gambling industry are excluded from the basic banking law. Through you, Mr. Chair, this was verified. However, this statement, according to my understanding, is not correct. In Curaçao, the basic payment account is also only for natural persons, just as the draft presented to Parliament of St. Martin. Next question. MP Westcott, through you, Mr. Chair, stated that the banks do not see the need for a covenant and want the legislation in place. But What about the other understandings and agreement that government should have with the local banking sector to inform and accommodate the population, such as awareness campaigns, consumer protection? Would that not warrant a covenant? Through you, Mr. Chair, it would have been preferred that no legislation was needed and that the banks in our monetary union would just implement a basic payment account based on the findings from the central bank. This way, the banks would have taken the initiative. However, that not being the case, we are now before Parliament presenting this legislation. It is indeed important that proper information campaigns accompany its introduction. As stated in the explanatory memorandum of the draft national ordinance on the basic payment account, once enacted, the government intends to launch a comprehensive public awareness campaign to inform the community about the content and purpose of this legislation. The government is confident that payment service providers will also play their part by offering consumers free and accessible information and assistance on the features of the basic payment account, the related fees, and the conditions of use. Next question. The government answered in their response to the final report that there are some other draft laws in the making. In addition to what the minister mentioned, which of these laws fall under the category of social economic inclusion? The MP asked this question as she gets the impression that this law has shifted from the focus on the consumer and the social inclusion angle to compliance. So can the minister, based on this law, as well as the intention of government as expressed in the governing accord and program, identify some laws that really target social inclusion, financial and otherwise? Through you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned in answering question 5 of MP Roseberg, in keeping in the realm of banking, the draft National Ordinance Supervision of Payment Service Providers, the draft National Ordinance Supervision Virtual Asset Service Providers, the draft National Ordinance on Oversight of Systems in Payment or Securities Transactions, and the draft National Ordinance on Supervision of FMI Systems Administrators will be submitted to Parliament within short. These laws will introduce a licensed supervised banking and payment system, which will promote financial inclusion of the banking system itself, as well as for the businesses and consumers. These developments will stimulate the development of bank products, which will improve also the lives of vulnerable groups of our society by both protecting users while fostering innovation in payments. In addition, these laws will also prevent financial isolation of St. Martin from international markets, making St. Martin more attractive for renowned international payment service providers such as Google Pay, Apple Pay, and PayPal. Next question. Reference has been made in the elucidation to the Supreme Court ruling. Can the minister put the draft law before us in the context of that ruling by the Supreme Court? Through you, Mr. Chair. The Supreme Court verdict HR 2021-1652 is referred to in the final report of our Parliament of January 4th, 2024. Within this verdict, reference is made to Article 471F of the Financial Supervision Act of the Netherlands. This article obliges banks that offer payment accounts to consumers to provide a basic bank account to the applicant, provided similar conditions are met as in our draft bill. The conditions stipulated in Article 471F of the Financial Supervision Act of the Netherlands are: A, the applicant for the basic bank account is an applicant. B, the applicant for the basic bank account does not hold a basic bank account with another bank or has not submitted an application for a basic bank account with another bank. C, if the applicant has a payment account with one or more banks, they will not contact a bank other than that one which they hold a payment account. D, the applicant agrees to the provision of information to be determined by or pursuant to a general administrative order to the bank they have requested. The ruling is referring to an article of the Dutch Financial Supervision Act obligating banks to enable consumers to apply for and use a basic payment account. This is what the draft law as presented to Parliament is stipulating for banks in St. Martin as well. Next question. In the CC meeting regarding this law, it was mentioned that an amendment would come to include legal entities in this law. I would like to know why, in the case of St. Martin, they were not included in this law in the first place. Does it even make sense to include such an amendment? Through you, Mr. Chair, this draft law, which seeks to provide individuals with access to a basic payment account, was developed based on research and reports within our monetary union. It focuses on meeting the basic banking needs of natural persons while ensuring compliance with international standards and minimizing risks of misuse. Expanding the law to include legal entities would require amending not only the definition of customer, but also several other provisions, as the current framework limits transactions amounts and services to transfers between St. Martin and Curacao. Such an expansion would require new research and stakeholder consultations and would delay the implementation of the law for individuals. However, I understand the importance of this matter, and as previously stated, it will be discussed further with both the CBCS and the Bankers Association to work toward a practical solution that also addresses the need of legal entities. Next question. In the answers from government, we have the complaint procedure explained for the basic payment account. How does this compare to the procedure for regular consumer bank accounts? Through you, Mr. Chair. The complaint procedure of the CBCS for regular consumers banking account is similar to that of the basic bank account. Next question. In the response from government to questions raised in the Central Committee meeting, a lot has been said about the crib number, whether it can be updated to a general identification number. Have we made any progress where that's concerned? What about the Get a Crib Number campaign? Through you, Mr. Chair, although you do not hear about it, there are ongoing discussions with the ministry regarding the alignment of the eGov program and the possible rollout. When we are further along in the finalization phase, this will be discussed through the proper channels. Next question. What I deduce is that there is a strong correlation between banking needs and income, which brings me back to the question of social inclusion. Are we really serving the public by only making it possible for them to have a bank account? Shouldn't we be doing more? Through you, Mr. Chair, the basic payment account is meant to make it easier for everyone to have access to a bank account and to take part in the financial system. This is an important first step toward financial inclusion for all residents. In addition, as previously stated, new laws are being prepared to help monitor and control bank transaction fees and to keep St. Martin connected to international banking networks. Those efforts will also make it possible for well-known international payment platforms such as Google Pay, Apple Pay, and PayPal to operate in St. Martin in the future. Next question. Is it procedures, thresholds, costs, or is it something with our consumers in terms of income or their mentality towards banks? What about those persons who are paid in cash? What benefit is a basic bank account to them? Through you, Mr. Chair, our world is becoming more digital every day, and as a result, people are using less cash. Having access to a basic payment account will give those who are paid in cash daily the opportunity to deposit their money safely into a bank account. This means they won't have to walk around with large sums of cash and will also be able to take part in digital payment systems. St. Martin is also moving toward a more digital economy. In many parts of the world, cash payments are no longer accepted everywhere. While we are not at that stage yet, we must prepare our people and ensure that businesses are ready to accept card payments in addition to cash. There are also broader discussions to be had about businesses that solely use international banking systems and do not accept cash, but those are topics for another discussion at a different time. Next question. The 17% of unbanked persons, is this comparatively high for St. Martin, not compared to Curacao? Given our economic reality, for example, compared to the French side, can we receive a more specific analysis based on our specifics, our dual island administration? Through you, Mr. Chair, unfortunately, we do not have comparable data from the French side, which would indeed have been an interesting comparison. The current draft law is therefore solely based on the surveys and reports conducted within our monetary union. Next question. No foreign transactions are allowed. Do we support or endorse the foreign transactions that take place via non-banking financial institutions? That is where a majority of the remittances are made. Do we want to facilitate this and ensure that the cost is cut for the consumer? Through you, Mr. Chair, the basic banking account is designed to provide a solution for individuals who currently cannot show a formal source of income and therefore are unable to open a regular bank account. This type of account, however, comes with certain limitations. As it relates to the significant amount of funds being transferred through non-banking financial institutions to countries abroad, this matter has my full attention and will continue to be reviewed and will be discussed with relevant stakeholders to determine the way forward. Next question. What about information for crypto market? What is the CBCS's position on that? Through you, Mr. Chair, CBCS refers to the research, The Rise of Financial Technology in Curaçao and St. Martin 2024, which includes the crypto market. This study explores the activities of companies active in financial technology, fintech, in Curaçao and St. Martin, and their impact on the financial sector. Furthermore, the regulatory framework, the actual and potential benefits of financial innovation, and the risks for consumer are explored. This was done to ensure a fair, efficient, and transparent market while maintaining financial stability, which are two important objectives of CBCS. Next question, is there any way for us to monitor compliance with the crypto market, where the crypto market is concerned? Through you, Mr. Chair, the draft national ordinance on the supervision of virtual asset service providers will be submitted to Parliament within short. Upon enactment, the sector will be placed under the supervision of the CBCS and must comply with all requirements of the law and other applicable regulations. Next question, regarding taxing of tips. These are usually paid in cash, and the MP would like to know if the minister has gotten anywhere with that. Through you, Mr. Chairman, we are currently reviewing whether the taxation of tips should be changed or discontinued. Research and data collection has begun to better understand the potential impact of any change to this policy. Is this legislation compliant and regulatory geared, or is it aimed at more social inclusion? Through you, Mr. Chairman, taking into account compliance with regulatory requirements, the goal of the legislation is financial inclusion, as having access to a bank account is a prerequisite for a social inclusive economy. Next question. We know that poverty is a barrier to socioeconomic inclusion. Can some attention be paid to that fact? Through you, Mr. Chair, with adoption of the basic payment account, we aim to lower the threshold for socioeconomic inclusion as more persons would have access to a bank account. Mr. Chairman, this brings me to the end of the responses to the questions posed by the honorable members of Parliament. I remain committed to transparency and constructive engagement with Parliament and trust that these responses serve to sufficiently address the questions posed. Access to a bank account is a basic need in today's world. The basic bank account ensures that everyone, regardless of income level or employment status, has the opportunity to safely manage their money, make payments, and participate in our growing digital economy. It promotes inclusion, reduces reliance on cash, and supports greater financial independence. This initiative is not just about banking. It's about giving every resident of St. Martin a fair chance to be part of a modern, secure, and accessible financial system. While this account comes with certain limitations, the goal is that over time, individuals can transition from a basic bank account to a regular bank account. This initiative is not meant to be a final solution, but rather a first step toward greater inclusion, independence, and financial progress for all residents of St. Martin. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to the Minister of Finance for answering those questions. I will now look to the floor to see if there's any members of Parliament that would like to have a point of clarification. I see we have MP Duran. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to my colleagues, to you, support staff. Good afternoon and welcome to the Minister, her support staff, and a special good afternoon to my people of St. Martin that are tuned in. Mr. Chairman, through you to the Honorable Minister, I do have some points of clarification. Most of them are tied to the amendments, of course, so I'll delve right into that. Firstly, I would like to thank MP Irian for coming with an amendment because it looked like that start amendment campaign. The reason why I say that is because months ago when the government came here to Parliament so that the public can understand, there was no intention to amend anything. Everything was just set and ready for approval. So I'm glad that my colleague was able to spark some minds to get the amendments going. Which brings me to my next point, Mr. Chairman. I remember vividly on September 17th when we had to have the meeting at 11 a.m. At 10:49 a.m., amendment was sent by the government in terms of wanting to address certain things. We couldn't continue the meeting, and since then it has been delay, and I'm sure that the public can read and see how much meetings we have pending, which I've been talking about for quite some time now. To delve right into it, I also noticed that an amendment that was submitted, I think it was 2 days ago, by MP Westcott, is basically an amendment of a point that was sent from MP Irian's amendment, where the central bank gave feedback, and that was amended by MP Westcott into, I think it was Lit 2, Article 2. I would like to know through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister, was your amendment reviewed by Yezet and Way, and is it included? Because I don't see it here reflected in the documentation. Can that be provided, please? Also, was your amendment, as how MP Irian amendment was sent to the central bank by your person, through you, Mr. Chairman, for the feedback in terms of their views on it, was your amendment also sent to the central bank? Because I also don't see that included in documentation. I think that that is very important for us to be able to have a clear understanding as to what we're here approving today, or potentially approving and or disapproving. So I think that all the cards need to be on the table in order for us to be able to have a holistic view of what is taking place. For now, I'll regress. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Duran. I see MP Westcott Williams would like the floor. MP Westcott Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you and our Secretary General. A good afternoon to my colleagues, and a good afternoon to the Minister and her support staff, and of course a good afternoon to all tuned in to this meeting of Parliament. Mr. Chairman, allow me to start with thanking the Minister for the answers provided. I heard a colleague of mine refer to an amendment by myself. I want to give to you, Mr. Chairman, that I will react and explain my amendment in the next round, because this is clarifications, I assume. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so with this, I have some clarifications I would ask the Minister to please provide clarity on based on her and the answers given. Mr. Chairman, we are dealing with the basic bank account law, and let it be stated that this particular draft law came to Parliament in December of 2023. So before this minister took office. That's to show you the continuity of a draft law. So, but just for the record, let that be stated. So back to the minister and her answers. Mr. Chairman, through you, the minister indicated that matters such as, it's not the only one, but matters such as whether the basic bank account holder would be able to, for example, make withdrawals abroad, that will be determined at the practical application of the law. And so my question is it the intention of the law that be possible or not? So is it that then I want to understand that answer. So we don't know yet whether for the different institutions such as the banks, whether the basic bank account holder would or would not be able to. So we have to wait until per financial institution you end up abroad and then say, oh, I can't now, I'm abroad, but I can't make a payment from St. Martin to Curacao, for example. So that's my question. Is that what we're awaiting? And what is the intention of the law where that is concerned? That it happens or that it can't happen? I hope the minister understands my question. Again, to be determined, and it was used, this terminology was used in more than one instance, and it is to be determined at the practical application of the law. So again, is it the intention that it happens or not? Mr. Chairman, the minister mentioned, and she also outlined several draft laws which are underway, and a few of them were mentioned by name. Question to be clarified. Are those mentioned by name all that are currently in the pipeline regarding this matter in general? Bank accounts, overview, supervision, etc. So, and if that be the case, if the minister could give us a listing of the draft legislation which is in the pipeline, so to speak. I would like to see that delineated, and I know I concur that the minister has mentioned them at different points in her answers. And then, Mr. Chairman, with respect to registered persons or not, and the answer was, so undocumented persons will not be covered by this law because it's about having an interest with or affiliation with St. Martin. In the case of the law of Curacao, where it pertains to a basic bank account, it is mentioned specifically in the definitions that you have to be legally residing. So a natural person legally residing in this case, in Curacao. In our case, that legally residing, rechtmatig verblijf, that is not included in our definition. And I wonder why. And then in connection with that answer as well, so the gardener who has been on St. Martin for the last 25 years, undocumented, because we have cases like that, would that person be excluded because he or she is not documented? And would that person be, because he or she can't get a regular account for whatever, but would they also be excluded from a basic bank account? Mr. Chairman, in terms of clarification, if the minister can just give an indication or give an answer to these, please. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. I now give the floor to MP Roseburg. MP Roseburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Blessed afternoon to the Minister and her support staff. Also blessed afternoon to my honorable colleagues. In regards to clarification, I would like to start with the amendment which was submitted by the Ministry of Finance itself. I'm happy to see that amendment based on the question that I brought forward in regards to ex-offenders and making sure that also they have the equal rights and there's no discrimination in that regard. That being said, I had a question in regards to the study that was done. It was mentioned that 78% of the respondents on St. Martin, that based on the study, the financial inclusion is the 3,000 should be sufficient. What I would like to know is what would be the consequence if that would change? Has this amount already been agreed upon with the different banks on St. Martin? And is there, has it been decided that it has to be gelijkluidend with Curaçao so that the 3,000 should be across the board. Also seeing that the law has been passed there already. So what would be the consequence if changes would be made? So those are my questions in regards to making that change, if that change would be made, what the consequences would be. Thank you.
Thank you. MP Roosburg. I see MP Arian would like the floor. MP Arian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you, all my colleagues, the Minister and her support staff, the Honourable Minister and her support staff. Minister, thank you for the answers and the clarification. Minister, in regards to the position of the government, because we saw or heard the position of the central bank, but what is the position of the government on the legislation given? Typically, even when we have budget debates, et cetera, the ministers give the position on the motions and the law itself. And what I'm missing here is the position of the government. What is the government position on the legislation? And like point article for article, because then as the person that wrote the legislation, then it could also be addressed. So the feedback from government and the feedback from central bank, the amendment, yes, would be could be amended to reflect the concerns of either government and or the central bank. And listening to your presentation, because I heard you repeating or saying the points of the central bank, but those points also, and that's why I really want the government's position, because those points were contradicted in your latest statements on basically your own position. So to me, if the government is coming and, let's say, given the position of the central bank, is that yours? Because, for example, you said the central bank talks about, sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, the central bank talks about fairness and going digital, for example. And a key point that you, the minister made was it may be unfair for smaller banks that cannot go digital, all right? I don't know any bank in St. Martin that does not have digital services besides Postpad, but I think this amendment addresses that, because you also state our St. Martin digital economy is expanding. We need and must prepare for a digital world. We have to prepare businesses for a digital economy. All of your final statements were saying basically exactly what I said in my amendment. So if the central bank's position is one way, but the government position is another, then we have a conflict already. So I really need to hear what the government position is going over. For example, in my amendment, I stated that all the activities that the bank has in a physical form needs to be available in the digital form. I don't see, we in 2025, right now we're going over to as a parliament, we're talking about AI now. So even more digital than before. So it cannot be that we as a government and the parliament, we are going in one richting direction, and then the central bank says, oh no, we don't want to get there yet. And based on their, if any of the other members read the response of central bank, they're also basically saying, no, let the market fix it. It's been 15 years, the market hasn't fixed it yet. I'm pretty sure people are still complaining every day about PayPal and their banks and so forth. So if the position of the bank is let them fix it, that means we're going to be here again for the next 10 years. Our job as members of parliament and the government is to address the laws that our people are complaining about. These are not drastic laws, no, but these are laws that make them work. These are laws that make the bank stop being lazy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Arian. I don't see a need for any more MPs. Minister. Oh, before I give the floor back to the minister, I see one more MP that would like the floor for clarification. MP York, you have the floor for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to the Minister, support staff, honorable colleagues, and the viewing public. Mr. Chairman, I just have two clarifications also for the Minister. The basic bank account, Minister, through you, Mr. Chair, as envisioned, mirrors the essential services according to what the explanation just given that are currently afforded to the personal bankers, right? However, as we've observed over time, the financial model, Mr. Chairman, of the banks evolve. And oftentimes that includes increased fees or new fees. Now, one could already question the fairness of that, but that's perhaps a conversation for another day. Nonetheless, it raises an important consideration. If certain banks already charge business customers for the use of online banking, what happens if in the future, if or when in the future, the financial model of the banks evolve to a point where personal bankers are being charged for online banking? What would that mean for those basic bank accounts at that time if the law mimics for personal banking what happens for basic banking, what happens on the personal side? Because, Mr. Chairman, I think you would agree with me as well, if we are now making a law and the law right now mimics basically the current scenario where personal bankers are not being charged, we can't make a law that in a couple of years potentially is already outdated. And when I say outdated, the reasoning behind the basic bank account would be not to have as much services, charges for the basic bank account as it has right now for the potentially for the personal ones. So if we're going to make this thing future-proof, as MP further already elaborated, we've been busy with this since 2023. I don't think we should leave it up to things as is, waiting for it if or when it evolves or changes to see what we're going to do with the law. If we could make things and put provisions in the law from now that already makes it impossible for those charges to be levied in the future, I think that's something we should deal with now and not potentially later. And lastly, Mr. Chair, the minister also mentioned legislations would be coming concerning other topics with banking. I would like to know what is the timeline and how many legislations can we expect? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP York. I now look to the minister if the minister is ready or if she would need
Mr.
some
Chairman,
time.
thank you for the additional questions or clarifications posed by the honorable members of parliament. If it would be allowed through you, I need about 40 minutes just to make sure that I have all of the questions clear and the answers to provide. Please.
Yeah. 40 minutes. So we do 4 o'clock. Okay, I hereby adjourn this meeting until 4 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Good afternoon. I hereby reconvene this meeting, and I now give the floor to the Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, to answer the questions of clarifications posed by the members of Parliament. Honourable Minister, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, and thank you once again, Mr. Chair. To answer the questions posed by the honourable members, or the clarifications posed by the honourable members of Parliament, starting with MP Duran. MP Duran stated, through you, an amendment was submitted 2 days ago by MP Westcott. Was MP Westcott's amendment reviewed by Yezet and Way, and was the advice included, and if not, can it be provided? Through you, Mr. Chair, the amendment from MP Westcott nor the amendment from MP Arian was reviewed by Yezet and Way. However, the note of advising from government submitted to Parliament was reviewed by Yezet and Way. Was MP Westcott's amendment sent to CBCS, and can the feedback be provided? Through you, Mr. Chair, no, the amendment from MP Westcott was just received and was not shared with CBCS. However, the amendment provided by MP Westcott is in alignment with the approved National Ordinance Basic Payment Account of Curacao.
Sorry, Minister. I think the question wasn't regarding to MP Westcott's amendment. I think it referred back to the amendment that the note from Minister. Okay. So just to clarify that the MP didn't ask about MP Westcott's amendment.
Understood. Next question, whether the note of advising brought by the Minister of Finance was also sent to CBCS for their review. Through you, Mr. Chair, the CBCS indicated that the adopted National Ordinance Basic Payment Account of Curacao took the limitations for the basic bank account out of Article 3 and 5. Based on the questions from MP Roseberg and the notification provided by CBCS, this note was drafted and reviewed by Yezet and Way. I now move on to questions by MP Westcott concerning the
Yes, sorry, Minister. I see we have interruption. MP Duran, you have interruption.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Minister. Minister, I ask if the note of advising that you submitted, so your amendment, was that reviewed by CBCS, as was the amendment from MP Arian? So not the extra part from the beginning, but was your amendment reviewed and or approved by CBCS, for clarification?
Thank you, MP. Minister, you have the floor.
to respond to MP Duran, which would have been now the third question posed by MP Duran. Allow me to clarify, through you, Mr. Chair, that the CBCS indicated that the adopted National Ordinance Basic Payment Account of Curacao took the limitations for the basic bank account out of Article 3 and 5 based on the question by MP Roseberg and the notification provided by CBCS. This nota was drafted and reviewed by Yezet and Way.
Minister, I see we have another interruption. I just want to remind MP Arian that this is his last interruption. MP, you have the floor.
I want to be very clear. I think that last week, Friday, I believe we got feedback from the central bank on an amendment that was sent. A nota van wijziging from the government has been submitted. In that IS, there's no feedback from the central bank. It's clear. So the question from MP Duran is, did the central bank review this nota van wijziging? Did they give feedback similar to my amendment? Not the exact way. It's a very yes or no question.
Thank you, MP. I hereby give back the floor to the Minister. Minister, you have the floor. Minister, I'll give you the opportunity to answer MP Arian, and then I see we have a potential interruption, maybe. Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to respond to the question posed by MP Arian, or the clarification posed by MP Arian. Based on what was received by the central bank, that was a decision taken by the government to then provide the note of unwising. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, Minister, thank you. I see we have a need for interruption from MP Westcott Williams. MP Westcott Williams, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, firstly, to yourself, I can understand you misunderstanding or differently understanding the question about my amendment, because truth be told, I too understood that a question was asked regarding that. But then probably the introduction to it is what led to the confusion. But I too understood that the question, that it related to mine as well. One. Secondly, do I understand the minister to say, because I think we're kind of getting caught up in unnecessary back and forth here. So do I understand the minister to say that from the central bank, she learned, the minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, that that matter was corrected in the law that was passed for Curaçao, and hence it was only a natural consequence for St. Martin to do it? Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking if I'm understanding it right, or thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to answer the question or clarification posed by MP Westcott, she is indeed correct with her thought process. I now move on to questions posed by MP Westcott. Concerning the practical application of the law, is it the intention of the law for withdrawals abroad to be possible or not? Through you, Mr. Chair, the basic bank account is designed to be used exclusively for transactions within the monetary union and Curaçao and St. Martin, my apologies. The intent of the law is therefore not to permit withdrawals or transactions outside of St. Martin and Curaçao. However, in practice, depending on the type of card issued by the bank, it may not always be technically feasible to completely block such foreign transactions. To clarify, while the intention of the law is to restrict use within the monetary union, in practice, some foreign transactions may still be technically possible. Several draft laws that are underway, on their way, are those mentioned by name. Are they in the pipeline? Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, those draft laws are indeed in the pipeline and are in the process of being submitted to Parliament. An overview of the relevant drafts will be provided to Parliament in writing so that Parliament has the complete overview. Undocumented persons will not be covered by this law as it pertains to Curaçao, where it pertains to the basic bank account. It is mentioned specifically in the definitions that you have to be legally residing in Curaçao. In our case, the legally residing rechtmatig verblijf is not included in our definitions. Why? In Curaçao, it was amended. However, not having this stated as such provides some room as persons with a genuine interest in St. Martin can also have access to the basic bank account. Questions by MP Roseberg. Study, 78% respondents of St. Martin earned 3,000 guilders. What would the consequences be if the 3,000 financial inclusion amount changes? Mr. Chair, through you, the 3,000 guilders is not set in stone yet, and it does not have to align with Curaçao. As previously stated, my intention is to discuss this threshold with the CBCS to address the threshold and take into account the realities of St. Martin's economy. Has the 3,000 guilders amount been agreed upon with the banks? Mr. Chair, through you, the 3,000 guilders is currently based on the findings from the research. I now move on to questions posed by MP Arian. The minister presented the position of CBCS with regards to the proposed amendment. What is the government's position on the legislation per article? Mr. Chair, the basic payment banking law applies specifically to basic payment accounts and not to all bank accounts. As previously stated, I understand and appreciate the intention behind the MP's proposed amendment. However, as mentioned earlier, this law is not the appropriate framework to regulate such matters. I will therefore take this up with the CBCS to explore addressing the issue through a more suitable piece of legislation. This system ensures equal access to services for all consumers of a payment provider without creating a separate entitlement for holders of a basic payment account. This was a deliberate and carefully considered decision. It takes into account that some smaller and specialized banks may not currently offer digital banking, and therefore imposing such a requirement through this law could unintentionally create greater obligations for basic account holders than for regular account holders at those institutions. At present, consumers retain the freedom to choose which bank best suits their needs, whether one with digital access or one without. Including such provisions as stated in your amendment in this draft law, which pertains only to basic payment accounts, would not be appropriate, as it would effectively grant holders of basic accounts more rights and those with regular bank accounts, which would make it discriminatory. I do, however, agree with the intention or the intent of the amendment. It should instead be incorporated into legislation that governs all bank accounts. I now move on to questions posed by MP York. The basic bank account, essential services to the current bankers. However, the financial evolve and fees change. Nonetheless, it raises concerns. Fees charged for online banking. What would it mean in the future for personal bankers? We cannot make a new law that is outdated. Does the basic bank account mirror the essential services currently provided by commercial banks for personal bank accounts? Through you, Mr. Chair, the Honorable MP, this is just the first step. Additional legislation will follow to address the other related matters. This specific law serves as a starting point to ensure accessibility to banking services for all residents. The next question, the Minister mentioned that additional legislation related to banking is on its way. Could the Minister indicate the expected timeline and how many draft laws are on their way? Mr. Chair, through you, as promised also to MP Westcott, this list of pending legislation in relation to banking will be provided in writing. That comes to the end of the clarification questions posed by the Honorable MPs. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for answering the clarifications. We will go over to the second round of this meeting, and according to the speakers list, I give the floor in the second round to MP Labega. No?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to all. Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions for this round. Thank you.
Thank you, MP. According to the speakers list, we have MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
A blessed afternoon, Mr. Chairman Griffier, Minister of Finance, her support staff, my fellow colleagues, those in the tribune, and all listening according to how the Minister of Finance says it to the sound of my voice. Mr. Chairman, in our previous meeting concerning this proposal, this law, there were a couple things, and we asked the questions after I reached out to the Minister of Finance and her team to discuss a motion that I have prepared, and I have received a broad majority in Parliament to support this, and I shall now read it. Parliamentary motion of St. Martin. The Parliamentary of St. Martin, in its meeting of October the 30th, 2025, considering that access to a basic payment account, basisbetaalrekening is essential to ensure the financial and social participation of all residents of St. Martin, particularly the unbanked and low-income groups, in line with the principles of fairness and inclusion. That the cost of living on St. Martin is notably higher than in Curaçao, with 2025 economic data showing that core household expenses, including rent, utilities, and groceries, are between 40% and 100% higher in St. Martin. That the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin, CSBC, have set the maximum monthly deposit limit for the basic payment account in Curaçao at 3,000 Caribbean guilders, which was established primarily for risk management reasoning and based on average income levels in Curaçao. That applying the same 3,000 guilders, Caribbean guilders, limit to St. Martin disregards local cost of living realities and constrains residents' ability to utilize the basic banking services for monthly income and essential expenses. That in most jurisdictions, the monthly deposit cap for basic payment accounts is determined to reflect at least 2 to 3 months of average living expenses. St. Martin's current limit falls well below this standard and therefore does not support fair financial access or inclusion. That practical expenses with market vendors who commonly operate with only a vending permit and lack traditional business licenses show the true scale of the issue. A typical market vendor spends about 540 Caribbean guilders per month on transportation and storage of goods and aims for a basic salary of 1,800 Caribbean guilders to generate just a modest 30% profit. Total turnover must reach up to 7,800 Caribbean guilders each month. Even the proposed 5,400 deposit cap is already a compromise, as it is below the real monthly turnover that many vendors require, while the current cap of 3,000 guilders is drastically inadequate. With limits set this low, vendors will continue to be forced to hide part of their sales outside the banking system, defeating the goal of genuine financial inclusion. That leaving the current cap unchanged would continue to exclude many working residents from access to safe and affordable banking services and would be contrary to the national goal of promoting financial inclusion across all sectors of society. The multiple stakeholders, including the CSBC, the domestic banking sector, CBCS, the domestic banking sector, consumer advocates, small business organizations, and members of the public are all directly affected by the fairness and practical ability of the basic payment account arrangement. That pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 6B of the Draft National Ordinance on Basic Payment Accounts, the authority to revise the deposit cap rests with the CBSC through General Binding Regulation, CBCS. That Parliament has both the duty and the authority to advocate for policy adjustments that reflect St. Martin's social economic reality and promote fair access for all citizens. Resolves that the Parliament of St. Martin respectfully requests the government, through the Minister of Finance, to formally advocate with the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin that the maximum monthly deposit limit for the basic payment account in St. Martin be raised to at least 5,500 Caribbean guilders per month. This amount reflects the current cost of living, the cash flow requirements of the local workforce, and international standards for practical banking inclusion. That the government, in its advocacy, make use of available cost of living information and relevant local data together with consultation from local banks, informal business associations, and consumer representatives to substantiate the support and support the proposed adjustments with factual evidence. That the Parliament of St. Martin is provided within 2 months with a detailed progress report, including actions taken to initiate the formal request, feedback received from CBCS and associate stakeholders, the anticipated decision process and implementation timeline for revising the deposit cap, that subsequent periodic reviews of the deposit cap be conducted and at least annually, ensuring Parliament and the public are duly informed of finding recommendations presented publicly and any proposed future adjustments to maintain and ensure transparency, fairness, and continuous alignment with St. Martin's evolving economic conditions. And goes over to the order of the day. This motion has been signed by 13 members of Parliament. Do I have to call the names? Yes. MP Lyndon Lewis, MP Otley, MP York, MP Arian, MP Duran, MP Labega, MP Kutai, MP Roseburg, MP Janssen-Webster, MP Waver, MP Sarah Westcott, and MP Franklin Myers. Copies of the motion go out to the Government of St. Martin, the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank of St. Martin.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I now go over to the next person on the speakers list, MP Roseburg. If there's a need, MP Roseburg, you're the next speaker on the list. Is there a need? MP Roseburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. I was a little distracted. In the second round, the only question that I have that wasn't answered or maybe missed is in regards to the following. The 3,000 that was mentioned in regards to the set cap, it was, if I understood, not set in stone. But what I would like to know in regards to the question, the additional question which I asked is the study that relates to that. What further study will then be conducted? Because as I understood, the 3,000 was mentioned based on the percentage, right? Through you, Mr. Chair. What further study will be conducted to look into that? And other than that as well, with the legislation mentioned that although we are in the same central bank, of course it can be deviating from what is currently occurring in Curaçao, but how does it look at the conversations that were had with the banks in regards to the 3,000, if that was agreed upon? I didn't get a clear answer if that was agreed upon or not. That's what I would like to know, because I don't want to have a situation, for example, through you, Mr. Chair, that a certain amount was agreed upon, but because now the amount will be higher, that certain banks will not be involved in the project anymore, and that it will be limiting the community in that sense. So I would like to have clarity on that. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. Following the speakers list, I see MP York. Is there a need? Yes. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I don't really have that much to say. It's just two points. I understood the minister in answering the prior questions, where the minister explained that, you know, any further detailing of the law will come in a subsequent initiative hereafter. However, the type of detailing I'm referring to is something that can change tomorrow. Meaning, if a bank wakes up in the morning and says, okay, we want to charge our clients more than they're already charging them, which they do often, that is something that would be not of the benefit of someone with a basic bank account by the time it rolls out, because the basic bank accounts will not be available tomorrow, right? So I'm questioning why why the minister feels the need to wait on a subsequent initiative instead of making it part of the law now. And the second point, Mr. Chairman, what I'm a bit confused of, I understand the need when my colleague MP Arian submitted an amendment that it went through the ringer as it pertains to going through the legal advice, etc., in order to get the central bank, in order to get feedback. But what I don't understand is if the original law, if the minister didn't send the original law through the same process, why did the minister do such with the amendment? Because if I understood correctly, the minister said stated in her earlier, one of her earlier answers that it did not go through JZNW, etc., in the note van wijziging. It did not go through the JZNW, etc. So is this a step that is still going to be done, or is this going to be put aside for one thing and done with something else? So those are the two questions I have for this round. Further, I'll leave that for what it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP York. Looking at the speakers list, I look at MP Arian. Is there a need? MP Arian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe MP York meant that he said on BZW, but the minister did mention that the note of wijziging did go to EZW. I think he meant going to central bank. So just to clarify. Agree? Okay. So again, so I guess I'll just try to clarify what he said. Yes, a note of wijziging came in, and it did not get feedback from central bank. Obviously, the amendment from MP Westcott either, as you mentioned in your answers. So my first question would be, is the minister, through you, Mr. Chair, going to send also the amendment from MP Westcott and the position of government in their amendment to central bank for feedback? Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm a little bit disappointed in the fact that when I look at the feedback from the central bank, the feedback from central bank was given in June. That's 4 to 5 months ago. And we are 5 months removed from that. We've had meetings postponed a couple of times for this particular topic. And, you know, I was listening cleanly to a radio interview by MP Viren. And, you know, there he mentioned that DP gets information first, which is fine, I understand that. But in this case, I would like to know if that was the same thing. Did the DP faction get the information first in terms of the feedback from the central bank? Again, that was as a chair of the finance committee, so and it could be true or not. And in addition to that, when the feedback is given does not, let's say, if the feedback was given earlier, it would have allowed due time also for any changes to be made similar to that or the change of MP Westcott to be able to address any concerns that the central bank may have in terms of adjusting the amendment, because at the end of the day, it's about the bigger picture. I don't think any MP in here, right, feels like a person that gets a basic bank account should not have all the same access digitally. I'm 100% sure of that. I'm 100% sure that every MP inside of here wants more banking services, such as PayPal, etc. So if the bank says we need more time, we could adjust. We could adjust the amendment. I don't, and I haven't heard any position from any other MP inside here saying I don't agree with the amendment. So I think that as a body of parliament, that we set the tone, just like how we have the motion now. We brought a motion saying, hey, we don't agree with the figure, and now we're raising the amount, right, against the central bank's wishes, right? So the central bank didn't give a position either on this. Actually, they did. Actually, they said based on their research, this is what they want, right? Now we have a motion supported by the majority of parliament, a heavy majority of parliament, also adjusting that. So yes, we have central bank's feedback, but what does parliament want to do, right? So I believe that as the initiator of the amendment, again, having if the feedback was given 4 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, in this meeting today, we could have had another amendment addressing the concerns of the central bank so that we today could have been approving an amendment that would have impacted our community in the way we like. And I think that should still be given the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Arian. I look in the speakers list and I see the next person is MP De Wever. MP De Wever, you have the floor.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, MP De Wever. I now see MP Veronica Webster Janssen. Is there any? MP Janssen, you have the floor.
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions, only a suggestion for the minister through you, Mr. Chairman, for verifying of the average spending. We have the Census 2022 data available, which has that information in it, so the minister can look there for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Veronica Janssen Webster. I see the speakers list. According to the speakers list, we have MP Westcott Williams. MP Westcott Williams, if you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, I think it's important also, especially for the general public, we the members of Parliament, we have, of course, the overview. We can go back in the archives of Parliament and get the relevant historic information on this proposal. After a lot of talk, Mr. Chairman, we received from a former MP, a member of the United People's Party, a proposal for a basic bank account. And while it is registered in here, in Parliament, it was actually sent to the minister and asking the central bank to look at that proposal. That was, I believe, in 2022. Fast forward, the ministers, I guess, did that, and we ended up with this draft before us, presented to Parliament in December. Take note of the month and the year, December 2023. So establishing that, Mr. Chairman, I have firstly a question for the minister. And through you, Mr. Chairman, the minister said the following, that in her previous answer, the minister said that no, undocumented persons would not be entitled to receiving a basic bank account. And then I gave the story or the question regarding the 15, 20-year here person, gardener or otherwise. And the minister clarified and said, actually, it is about a vested interest in St. Martin, yes or no, that would be a determining factor. So specifically for that, so could it be that a person undocumented here, let's keep it a little shorter, maybe 10 years, 12 years, because that's the reality. We have many of them. But that person, because he or she works here, has worked here, children going to school, I mean, you name it, could that person then, who is not documented but have that kind of an interest/relationship with St. Martin, would he or she be able to get it? So notwithstanding the undocumented, but that kind of interest, having been here like nearly forever. So that's my question there. And then, Mr. Chairman, I got from the minister through you that we will be receiving the listing of the legislation in progress, the relevant legislation in progress. And I would also now like the minister to add to that listing several points. The minister agreed with statements by members of Parliament, comments by members of Parliament. And thus my question is, through you, if the minister, based on her presentation and her responses, could provide Parliament with an overview and timeline of the matters that the minister consider important based on comments from the members of parliament that she would discuss in order to come to whatever potential changes. So if the minister can provide that, we heard several, maybe 3, 4, if not more, of the minister saying, I agree with that statement and or position. However, in order to decide how to make it happen, I need to have discussions with the Bankers Association. And so if the minister could list those items, and if at all possible, I will have the follow-up discussion with the Bankers Association next month, next year, whatever the case may be, so that we can then have that as a sort of monitoring mechanism in terms of the things that need to happen. And then, Mr. Chairman, before my time runs out on me, of course, before I even got a chance to nicely present my amendment, it was highlighted by a colleague. And I thank him because it also gives us the opportunity to further discuss the amendment informally. But, Mr. Chairman, it is very serious. And the reason, so I, like everybody, unfortunately, this is not one of the things that the DP, which I understood my faction member Kotai mentioned. I didn't hear it, but I take for granted that it was mentioned. But this was not one of the documents that we had premature or early, whatever, insight into. And that's a letter from the central bank on the amendment by my colleague MP Irian. So when I looked at that and I said, but you know, we need to be very cautious and conscious of whatever we do in terms of amendments, because the last thing we want is that a law that in essence carries the support by Parliament because of amendments to it, when it ends up back to the government, and the government, because of technical and or other reasons, cannot ratify the law. That was my reason for saying, well, there are more ways to skin a cat than one. And since we have, listen what we have in our, let me see if I can pull it up there quickly before my time runs out on me. But I want to tell you, Mr. Chairman, what we say in the definitions. What we say in terms of the right to a basic bank account, Article 2 in our legislation, which brings me to make a note, because why are our articles not in sync with the articles in the same law of Curaçao is because there is an article in that of Curaçao that speaks about the services of a basic bank account, but we don't have that article. That's just a note for the minister. However, what I want to get to, listen to what the right to a basic bank account states in our case. Under Article 2, sub 8. Listen to this. Het is verboden zichtbaar onderscheid te maken tussen klanten met een reguliere betaalrekening en klanten met een basisbetaalrekening. Zichtbaar onderscheid, so you could do it niet zichtbaar, you could make an onderscheid. Those are the kind of things that could be the result. However, Curaçao's law does not have that. They have the same rights to a basic bank account, but listen what they state. They state for that same paragraph, recht op basisbetaalrekening. Wait, now I need my amendment, Mr. Chairman, quickly there, before I don't get a chance to present it. Okay, here we go. Mr. Chairman, in Curaçao, it is stated in the following way. De betaaldienstverlener maakt geen onderscheid tussen klanten met een betaalrekening en consumenten met een basisbetaalrekening, anders dan voorzien in deze Landsverordening. Punto. So if it is in Curaçao like that, would the central bank have a problem with us putting it in that way in our ordinance? Hence, my proposal for an amendment. Because I cannot see the government saying, well, you know, the central bank said they ain't sure about your amendment, so it cannot go in. Just to explain. At the same time, and that's why I mentioned there are more ways to skin a cat than one, MP Irian's amendment. And let it be known here that I discussed my amendment with MP Irian because I realized that it was actually basically covering what the MP wanted to do. The only difference is that the reaction of the central bank to the MP's amendment was that, yeah, we don't think it really could go in that way, and it shouldn't be in this law. So, hence my amendment, and if the minister need a day or two to have the central bank say something about my amendment, that might be a good thing, in fact. Because just like I wouldn't like it for the other MP's amendment, I wouldn't like for my amendment to actually hold back this law when it's passed by Parliament and when it needs to be ratified by government. Mr. Chairman, I see you looking a little, are you going to say something to me about the time? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just needed to make that clear. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my, that's my amendment proposal. And let me see. And yeah, and that's the explanation for it. And as I said, Mr. Chairman, we discussed it, and if indeed, as my colleague MP Irian indicated, if we can have some time to kind of make sure we don't want to send in amendments that double up or whatever, and what cannot go in an amendment per se because it might kind of distort the law, then we put it in a motion to make sure that, like, for example, in the case of the motion presented by MP La Cruz, that we can have a motion actually asking the minister about those things that we hear are coming in other laws. And then my last question in this regard is the matter pertaining to the digitalization. Just let me finish it,
MP,
Chairman.
just finish the last
Yes,
sentence.
exactly
and then,
what I'm going to do.
and
No,
then
but in all
your time.
honesty,
Yeah.
if the matter pertaining to the upgrading and improvement of bank services via digitalization, is that in a common law that the minister referred to? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really thank you, and I appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. We have come to the end of round two, but I just want to clarify, seeing that we are following the speakers list, and maybe for the viewing public as well, to note that I did skip certain persons, certain MPs, seeing that they are not here at the moment, such as MP Peterson and MP Frankie Myers. Yeah? So just so there's no confusion with that. I hereby adjourn briefly, just to discuss with the minister and see how we continue from here. Meeting adjourned. Okay. I hereby reconvene this meeting after a brief adjournment and discussion with the minister, seeing the questions that were asked and also seeing the amendments that were also sent in, and also the motion that was tabled as well. We have come to the conclusion to allow the minister time to peruse it and give clear answers on that. So I am looking at the griffier to touch base with the minister to ensure that as early as next week, we can set a date to reconvene this meeting. Yeah, so meeting adjourned until hopefully next week, early in the week. Meeting adjourned.